Good evening and welcome to 13 Horror Nights. It's episode 1 and tonight's movie is Bird Box. I am so freaking excited to do this. These are always so much fun to do, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing it again. Now, this year there's going to be 3 parts to every video. The first one is before I watch the movie, I just watch the trailer, then the normal review without spoilers, then review with spoilers. That'll probably mean that the videos this year will be longer, which makes sense since you guys are getting less of them. Alright, I picked this one first because, one, I don't have a Netflix. I'm watching it with a friend who does have Netflix, but also, this is, I'm almost completely sure, the most recent movie out of all the ones I'm watching this month. It's the closest any of these are to being very fresh in someone's mind. Actually, that's not true. One of them is extremely fresh in people's minds right now, but we'll get to that later. Now, the thing with Bird Box, before going into this, even seeing the trailer, I knew the premise was there are these creatures. If you see them, you kill themselves. So basically, there are people all around the world just killing themselves. It's essentially The Happening, but hopefully not as dumb. I know that it stars Sandra Bullock. I just watched the trailer, and it gave me about what I was expecting. And I do have to say, Sandra Bullock is a very good actress, but playing a mother is a role that she is just really, really good at. I know that she has kids in real life. I actually looked that up a few seconds ago, so I wouldn't sound dumb when I was saying that. But yeah, being a mother is a role that she slips in very well. The idea is she needs to go from point A to point B, but the problem is that, of course, there are these monsters that go around the world. There was a scene in the trailer where they were in a car, and the car's windows were, covered in, paint. And they were, stopped for some reason, and then, new cars, of course, there's the thing with, the sensors around the cars. Sensor, there's something to your right. Sensor, there's something in front of you. And then they all went off. And then someone, of course, said, oh, they're all gone. And then suddenly all the sensors were going off at once. And I hope that, now, I think that something that they're going to be doing a lot in this movie is playing on the fact that you can see what's happening, the people in the movie cannot. And I'm going to call this right now. There is going to be a moment where the kid, disobeys the mother and takes off the blindfold because she says, under no circumstances are you to take off your blindfold. And I'm sure someone's going to do that because kids are, kids. They do that type of stuff. Also, what's funny is that the trailer gives absolutely no indication as to why the movie is called Bird Box, but I've learned from other stuff, even before the trailer, that I think they have, birds in a cage, and the birds will alert them if they see the monsters coming or something, but I think it's kind of weird to call the movie that, and especially to not have any reason in the trailer why it's called that, but whatever. I think that this movie is going to be pretty good. I don't think it's going to be spectacular, but I think it's going to be good. I guess I'll get back to you after I've seen it. Okay, I have seen Bird Box, and I'm happy to inform you that it has exceeded my expectations. This is a very good movie. I'm giving it a solid 9 out of 10. Yeah, the setup is exactly how I described it to you. There are a lot of parallels between it and The Happening, and I have to admit, just the seeing people kill themselves, in mass droves, honestly was kind of comical and weird, the way that it was not that bad in The Happening. It just looked, some of it was kind of silly. I'll admit that in a very dark way. Some of it was kind of silly. But one thing that this movie has that The Happening doesn't have is really good characters. I absolutely loved Sandra Bullock in this movie. There are several other good actors. The only one I didn't like is John Malkovich, but I've yet to see a role he's been in where I did like John Malkovich, so that might just come with the territory. And also, his character was just really, really bad. Intentionally. He's supposed to be a bad person. He's a jerk. He doesn't care about anybody except for himself. But whatever. So yeah, this is essentially an apocalypse movie in the vein of something like Night of the Living Dead, where you're right at the onset. But in this one, it's it goes back and forth between present day, which was 5 years after the thing started, and right at the beginning, right at the onslaught of it all. It eventually gets to the point where the main character, Sandra Bullock, is named Mallory. And she is pregnant, and she her sister dies. There's a really thing where they're driving home from the hospital, and you see this in the trailer. This isn't a spoiler. You see this in the they're going home from the hospital, and she reaches in the back to get something, so she's not looking, and the sister who is driving sees it, and it's a really cool effect what they do. It looks like, at first I thought it looked like their eyes become red, but as the movie goes on, it looks more like all the colors in their eyes are just bleeding together into this one thing. And then they do whatever it takes to kill themselves. But they eventually get into, I think, John Malkovich's house with a bunch of other people, and they try to survive. They go on grocery runs, because one of them works at a grocery store. They're just trying to live their life, and yes, they do discover that birds can sense when they're near, because otherwise it's not safe to go outside without a blindfold for any reason at any point. And there are a few other characters. There's Tom, this guy who becomes a love interest for Mallory, John Malkovich's character. You also get Olympia, who's also pregnant, and they're just trying to live their lives. And I was correct in my assumption that you never see the monsters. You're not even shown... the camera is not even shown what they look like. It's all left up to the viewer's imagination. And yet another parallel between this and The Happening. You can always tell when the monsters are near because there's wind that picks up a bunch of leaves. Another thing with wind. But thankfully it is not plants farting on humans and making them kill themselves. It's something a little bit less dumb than that. Much like in the Of the Dead series, the problems for the characters in Bird Box comes not only from the world-ending apocalypse, but also their fellow man. There are looters, there are murderers, there are just a bunch of other people. So basically, again, I already said this, there is, there are two storylines going on for this in time. One is, the beginning of it, and then, it keeps jumping forward to, Sandra Bullock and the two kids on a boat trying to get to a settlement, a compound. And she gives them the little speech. This is, the first part of the movie. The little speech is if you hear something, tell me. Never take off your blindfold. If you take off your blindfold, you're gonna die. And they didn't really play up the their blind thing as much. They do kind of show what they can see in the way that they literally just put a piece of cloth over the camera, so you can kind of see shapes and light and dark, but you can't really make out any detail. But really, I think better than the premise is the characters in this movie. I absolutely loved Sandra's character, Mallory. I loved Tom. I loved a lot of them. They were good characters that you wanted to see make it through this. This is a pretty good end-of-the-world apocalypse movie. It's very intense at some points. It's very emotional at some points. The ending was really, really heavy. It was very, very... It was a lot, but it was good. It was good. This is a very good movie, and... last year and the year before this, by absolute coincidence, exactly one of the movies was directed by a woman. And this year, again, by absolute coincidence, only one of them was directed by a woman. And it's this one, directed by Susanne Bier. And again, last year and the year before, the one directed by a woman was one of the best movies I've seen those months, and this is looking to be the same way. So I would recommend Bird Box. Get Netflix, use somebody else's Netflix, I don't care. It's a good movie. I'd check it out. Alright, now let's go into some spoilers. As it turns out, there are two categories of humans in the Bird Box world. The first one is most people. When they see the creatures, they will do whatever it takes to kill themselves immediately. But there's another type of person, too. Some people... whenever they see, they don't really give a reason for it. They imply maybe it's, people who are already mentally impaired in some way or something. Some people, they don't kill themselves when they see it. In fact, they think it's absolutely beautiful. So beautiful, they want everybody around them to see it too. And they turn out to be, I think, more of a problem for the survivors than the monsters themselves. Because as long as you don't take off your blindfold, the monsters can't hurt you. They can try to tempt you. They actually are able to mimic voices and tell people no, it's me, it's person, but please take off your blindfold, look at me. But as long as you don't listen to them, you can beat them. But then the humans present more of a problem because they can rip off your blindfold, force your eyes open, do other things. Yeah, and one of those people ends up going into the little house that the big group was in. And he messes things up. He rips the newspaper and paint off the windows. And everybody except for Tom and Mallory die. Now, as this is happening, right before this is happening, both Mallory and Olympia gave birth. So now it's Mallory, Tom, and just these two kids. A boy and a girl. And she calls them boy and girl. And it's not because that's what she named them. That's because she didn't want to name them, which is weird. So, cut to the future, and they learn about this settlement where people can go, and it's a safe haven. And right before they leave, Tom gets killed, and he tells... But before he dies, or before he goes off to face the crazy humans, he tells them to go to the settlement. So then they go, they start the very long journey on the boat. and they eventually get to the rapids. And one thing they've been building up a bunch was that they need somebody to see, to be like a coxswain to sort of direct them through the rapids. And Mallory was like, somebody has to do it. But then she at the end decides, no one's going to take out their blindfold. We're just going to try to go through it. Of course they crash and they sink, but they make it to shore, and then they have to walk the rest of the way. And then there's this very intense scene where the three of them all get separated, and Mallory is just desperately yelling and screaming for like them to like come to her or stay where they are, or just keep calling out to her. And the monsters keep imitating her voice, telling them to take off the blindfolds. And she comes across the boy who is her kid. I don't think that it's really a coincidence that she seems to get along with with boy better than girl, because girl was Olympia's kid. But then the boy tells Mallory that girl is actually kind of scared of her. And it is true. She's kind of a very stern person. She didn't like them calling her mom, and she was very, very harsh with them. And there's like this really sad, almost a tearjerker, where she's like calling out to girl and just saying, please, I'm sorry I was mean to you. I was sorry I was so harsh. We can go and start a new life together. And they start walking, and they keep trying to tempt them more. Again, the last scene of this movie is very intense, but they eventually make it. And it's this, it used to be a school for the blind. Blind people are completely immune, which is, I guess, something I should have seen coming, but kind of took me off guard. So they go there, and everything is happy, and they start living their lives. It was a very good ending. It was a touching ending to this movie. I think that this works more as a drama than a true blue horror movie, because the strongest aspects of Bird Box were not in the scares or the intensity, because, again, just in a weird way, it's kind of silly watching people just blank face, like, kill themselves in the ways that they do. They did a few things where, like, honestly, they should have cut away before it happened, because actually seeing a person get hit by a bus isn't as shaking as, like, seeing a person about to get hit by a bus and then it cuts away while you hear the noise. Yeah, but the best parts in Bird Box come from the interactions, from the characters. This was more of a, this worked more as a drama, as a horror movie, but for what it is very good. 9 out of 10, definitely. Alright, I will see you guys tomorrow.